Join Jerill today in the Appalachian Heritage Woodshop, where he is building a kitchen shelf.
The Appalachian Heritage Woodshop is brought to you by Christian Internet Services, common sense internet marketing and web design. Our internet marketing commissions are based on results. Robinson and McElwee, thinking business, practicing law. Waterlock's unique tung oil and resin blend stains, sealers, and finishes. The go-to finish for wood enthusiasts since 1910.
The Appalachian area is comprised of 13 eastern states covering 205,000 square miles of rugged, mountainous terrain. It stretches from New York to Mississippi, with West Virginia being the only state totally encased in the area. When this region was first settled, the immigrants had to travel over the Appalachian mountain range with only what they could carry or haul by wagons. They would make furniture and other wooden items that were necessary and functional.
To make a hearty stew, first cut up your squirrel, rabbit, possum, or groundhog. Coat it with flour and brown in hot lard in your cast iron Dutch oven. Season with salt and pepper. Add whatever vegetables you have on hand, like potatoes, carrots, onions, and turnips. Add enough water and cover and cook over the pot-bellied stove fire until done. To thicken the stew, mix some fresh milk and flour and slowly stir into the pot. Serve with biscuits or cornbread.
This is Jerill Vance with the Appalachian Heritage Woodshop. I'm coming to you from Jackson County, West Virginia, Heritage Log House, which is located at Cedar Lakes Conference Center. I'm with Margie Parsons, president of the Jackson County Historical Society. We're in the kitchen, which is a separate structure from the log house. Margie, can you tell us why the kitchen was separate from the house?
Well, they kept the kitchen separate from the house because the kitchen was more likely to have an accident and have fire. And they thought if they were separate, they had a better chance of saving the entire house.
Very good. And it was called a. So it was called a summer kitchen.
Yeah, all the time they did that.
Okay.
That way also in the calling it a summer kitchen would be that they didn't have to heat up the main living quarters in the summertime for all the cooking. Because, you know, in the winter you didn't matter because you wanted it warm,
right,
but to help you keep a house cooler.
Yeah. And I noticed the kitchen does not have a lot of extras. They have just what they need. Mm-hmm. And of course, one of the things that caught my eye is the shelf here. They have a real nice kitchen shelf. And in today's kitchens, they have cabinets where they put everything in cabinets, all their dishware and all their appliances and everything. Mm-hmm. But back then, they didn't have as many appliances or any utensils. Mm-hmm. So they either put it on the shelf or hung it from the shelf.
Yeah, much more accessible that way also. You don't have to reach up and open the door and look on the shelves. You get used to it, you can just reach out and you pretty well know where the spoon's going to be or the roller. Yeah. And you don't have to turn and look at it.
Also, a lot of these things were built by the homeowners themselves, and it was very easy for them to build these as opposed to a full set of kitchen cabinets.
Yes.
The Appalachian people were very self-reliant. This is a nice kitchen shelf here. So let's go back to the Appalachian Heritage Woodshop, and I'll show you how to build this kitchen shelf. It doesn't matter if you're using hand tools or machinery in your shop. You need to know the safe way to operate your equipment. Make certain you have the proper safety equipment, and most importantly, use your PPE. Be safe and enjoy your shop time. The shelf we just saw in the kitchen was a nice little project. So I'm going to show you how to build that, and I'm going to use poplar, and these 3 boards will be plenty. So the first thing I want to do is cross cut these to the right length, and then I'll dimension them. Okay, now I've got these marked where I want to cross cut them, so I'm going to do that here at the miter station. Now I'm ready to face joint these boards, and of course the joiner is the best tool for that. I face jointed one side, now I'm ready to run them through the thickness planer. Now I need to edge joint the board, so I'm back at the joiner. Now I've face jointed and planed to the correct thickness all these boards. I've also edge jointed one end. So now I'm ready to rip and get the other end parallel. And I'll do that here at the table saw. Now that I've got the board flat and the right thickness, I've got one edge jointed. Now I'm ready to rip it to the proper width. So I've got my fence set up and I'm ready to go. So now I need to square cut the end of the shelf board and then cut it to the right length. Okay, now I'm ready to rip the shelf board. This goes on top of the shelf supports. So I've got the saw set up and ready to cut. Okay, now I'm ready to run this through my drum sander. And I set the depth on my drum sander a little bit different than most people. What I do is deliberately raise the head above the thickness of the wood, start the sander at a very slow feed rate, start feeding the board through, and then lower the head until I hear it start to sand. That's how I adjust the height. So let's try that. Now I've got my miter gauge set up with a stop block, and I'm going to cross cut my shelf supports, 3 of them to the same length. Now that I've got the shelf supports cut to the right length, I need to shape the exposed edge. So what I've done is created a diagonal from corner to corner with a straight edge, and I've measured in a set distance from the bottom and top, and then I use French curves to fill in the curve between those points. So I've got a nice sweeping curve here, so I'm going to cut this on the bandsaw and then use this as a pattern for the other two. So let's go over the bandsaw and get this cut. Okay, now I'm at the bandsaw. I've got the guard set up at the right height. I've got a 1/4 inch blade on here. I'm going to see about cutting this nice sweeping curve. So let's see how it goes. So now I'm going to take this over to the oscillating spindle sander, sand that a little bit, and then use this as a pattern for the other two. Now before I use the oscillating spindle sander, I want to clean it. Okay, now I've got my dado blade set up, and I've got it set up to where it's about a 1/2 inch width, and it is about 3/8 of an inch high. I've got the fence set up with a stop block on it, and what I'm going to do is cut a dado in the board, and then reverse the end and do the same thing on the other side, and then one in the middle. So let's see how it works. Now I've got it set up to cut the dado in the middle of the board for the middle shelf support. I've just installed a sacrificial fence and buried part of the blade into the fence. I've got the height and the width adjusted to create a tongue on the shelf support board so that this tongue will fit into the grooves on the shelf board we just created. So let's see how it works. Okay, for the front corners of the shelf board, I don't like leaving a sharp edge. It's sort of a head banger. So what I'm going to do is round that over. I've got the 1/4 inch round over bit set up in my router table, so I'm going to round over the edge on the top shelf and the back of the shelf. The shelf backboard in the original, in the log cabin, was square along the bottom, and I thought I would give it a little bit of contour. So what I've done is come back a set distance from the shelf support board on both sides, and then from that I found the center line. Now using French curves, I've created a template, and the way I like to do it is create half of a template, and then I lay it on the board and line it up with the center line. and trace it out, and then flip it over and line it up with the center line again, and trace that. And now that gives me a symmetrical curve. And I've done the same thing with the little template for the ends. So now I'm ready to cut this with a jigsaw. Okay, now I want to sand the contour of the shelf backboard. And before I do that, I want to clean the drum. And now I need to turn on my dust collector. And I'm ready to sand. Okay, I've just completed sanding all the parts. So now what I'm ready to do is assemble it. This is a good application for screws because the grain is what's called cross grain. So we'll not be using any glue, and the screws will not prohibit it from what minor movement there will be. So the way I do it, I've already marked where I want the holes drilled. So I prefer to drill from the front side to the back. And as you can see, I've got it propped up on the bench so I don't drill into the bench. I'm not worried about any tear out, because when I flip it over, what little bit of tear out you see will go away when I countersink. You need to countersink it so the screws will not keep the board from being flat against the wall. So now it's ready to assemble. I'm using a special type of screw. It has serrated threads, and the tip has a little groove cut in it which actually drills the pilot hole. The hole that I just drilled is a through hole where the screw goes all the way through, and then that will allow the shelf support board to be pulled tight. So now let's just go ahead and assemble that. Okay, I've got it turned upside down so the top of the shelf back and the top of the shelf support board are on the bench and in alignment. I've got the clutch set on my drill, and all I need to do is hold it in place. Okay, now I'm ready to install the actual shelf board. And it just goes right on top. Okay, now I've turned it around. I've used a clamp to clamp it here, and this will keep it stable, nice and flat. So now I'm ready to install the shelf. And I'm just going to put a quick little bead of glue right down along the backboard here. And I'm going to put just a little bit in the middle of the shelf support boards. And this is cross grain, but this is such a small amount but it's not going to keep it from moving. Now I like to use my fingers and feel instead of trying to visualize and measure. I need to slowly walk it down and take any bow out. Now I'm ready to apply a finish to the kitchen shelf. Rather than using a stain, I'm going to use a dye. A dye is more consistent and even and gives you better quality, but yet you can still see the grain. And that's because the particle size in a dye is much, much smaller. Now a dye comes in a powder where you can add it to a water or an alcohol, but you can also buy it pre-mixed. And this is pre-mixed water-based dye. I prefer the water-based. The alcohol-based dries so fast that it leaves lap marks. Of course, with the water-based, you have the issue of the water raising the grain. So to compensate for that, you wet the wood down, which raises a grain, and then sand it back and make certain you don't sand too far. Always test on a piece of scrap, which here's what I've done, and that's given me the color that I want. And for this, I'm going to use a foam brush, and I'm going to do the back first. And the object is to just get it on as quick as you can. It will soak in evenly, even though it's going on thick. And then I wipe the excess off with a rag. The reason I'm doing the back, anytime you have wood, you need to cover all surfaces the same so that it will expand and contract the same. Otherwise, you're going to have trouble with it warping or twisting. It will be the same color no matter how thick or how many coats you put on. Okay, now I've just finished applying the dye to this kitchen shelf, and now you can see the consistent color, but yet you can still see the grain. So I highly recommend a dye instead of a stain. Be sure and seal the can up so it doesn't dry out. So this is a kitchen shelf. After it dries, I'll give it a good coat of wax, and then we'll be finished with that project. Okay, now that I've applied the dye to the kitchen shelf and it's dried, now what I want to do is apply a little bit of a paste wax. And I'm using a dark colored paste wax. And I like to load the rag up real good. And then just wipe it on. And then take another rag and buff. Now here is the completed kitchen shelf. Let me put a block here to support it. This is made out of poplar. Poplar is a common hardwood in the Appalachian area. And of course it is stained a dark walnut. You could also use pine. This is pine that I've harvested on my farm, milled and kiln dried. If you use a pine, make certain that it is dried to the proper moisture content for your area. For the Appalachian area, the U.S. Forestry Service recommends 6 to 8%. The construction grade pine that you buy at a lumber store or a big box store is only dried to 18 to 20%. So it is too high to use. If you elect to use that, finish the drying process before you use it. Otherwise, you're going to have trouble with the wood shrinking and distorting, and you don't want that. Now, if you do use pine, You can stain it or give it a nice collar to match whatever decor you want. If you elect to use a hardwood, in the Appalachian area there's a wide variety of hardwoods available. Now here's a nice piece of ambrosia maple that has a little bit of mineral stains and spalting. This would make a nice kitchen shelf. Here's a nice piece of walnut that I've kiln dried. This would make a nice shelf. You could also use cherry or oak or sassafras, maple, there's elm. There's a wide variety of hardwoods available. If you use a good quality hardwood, I recommend you put a clear coat or a clear finish on it and let the beauty of the hardwood show through. If you're using poplar or pine, then you can put a stain or a dye on it to color it to match whatever decor you want. So, this was a nice build. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you enjoyed the Appalachian Heritage Woodshop. If you're interested in any information or plans on any of the items featured on the Appalachian Heritage Woodshop, just check out our website, AppalachianHeritageWoodshop.com. Remember, be proud of your Appalachian heritage.